Minutes past 8, you're on 94.9 this morning, and I have Dr. John in the studio from Creation Ministries International. If you have any questions for him, send them through. The text line is 0401 949 949. And of course, each week we talk about stuff that either questions that you've sent through to us or media, stuff that's come out in the news over the past week. And I know a lot of people, of course, at the moment, Dr. John. By the way, good morning, Dr. John.
Yeah, good morning, Mick.
It's great to have you in here again. And a Merry Christmas to you, Dr. John.
And to you, Mick.
We've got Christmas in only days, and of course, Christmas has been sort of high on the agenda for so many people. We see that in the media a lot. But one thing that the media has pointed out about Christmas is that we've got a Christmas star forming. Yeah, sounds interesting.
It is, Mick. And look, I was a bit excited by that when I read about it in the last few days. But looking out the window at the weather, I don't know whether we're going to be able to see much because looking at the forecast last night, the forecast is for rain possibly every day for a week.
Yes, and considering it's when the Christmas star's meant to come out. Now, they say a Christmas star forming, and it could be, something like the Star of Bethlehem in the Nativity story. What do they mean by a Christmas star forming?
Well, look, Mick, this is something that's been intriguing to people ever since Matthew's Gospel was first written, because Matthew is the only Gospel writer that speaks about the so-called Star of Bethlehem, and people have wondered what it was ever since. I mean, for the last 2,000 years. And there've been all sorts of suggestions as to what it might have been, and one of them is one of the things that we're not going to be able to observe this week because of the weather.
Rats.
But it's a what they call a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. They're very, very close together, closer than they've been for about 800 years.
I've got a mate that sort of follows the planets and stars all the time, and he goes, see that one there? That's Jupiter and that's Saturn. And I know over the last few months they've been getting closer and closer and closer.
Well, apparently when they're very, very close together, it almost looks like one, and it's very, very bright on a cloudless and night that's not interfered with light. But of course, we're going to have cloud interfering over the next week, and we may not be able to see it.
Oh.
But look, there've been suggestions as to what it might have been. Whether the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction is a double conjunction, but they've suggested that there might have been a triple conjunction with another planet there, so it would have looked very, very bright. But look, nobody really knows. All we do know is that there is this story about a star, or a meaningful star, when Jesus was born. And the story goes that wise men came from the east to Jerusalem, saying that they had seen a star which indicated to them that a king had been born, a king of the Jews had been born in Jerusalem. And of course, we call them the wise men, but it doesn't really say they were wise men. The expression in the Greek is magoi, which we call the magi as well. And really, we don't know that there were three of them. Traditionally, there were three of these wise men, or magi, but we only get that number because they brought gifts with them: gold, frankincense and myrrh. And because there were three gifts, it's assumed that there might have been three wise men.
Yes.
But anyway, as the story goes in Matthew's Gospel, and it's a very important story, because we know that Jesus at his birth fulfilled a great number of Old Testament prophecies, and the story of the wise men is very important for the fulfillment of several of them. And anyway, what they did, they came from the east, and it's presumed that was somewhere near Babylon. And we don't really know that they were wise men. It would seem that they were both astronomers and astrologers. Now, there's a difference between astronomy and astrology. Astronomers study the stars' movements and positions and so on, and astronomy is regarded as a genuine science. Now, astrologers also look at the stars, but they use the stars to interpret events. And most scientists would say that's not science. That's more in the realm of the occult, perhaps, but maybe not. But astrology is very, very popular. A lot of people these days, most people maybe know what their star sign is, and they pick up the magazines and read their horoscope and all of this sort of stuff. So both astronomy and astrology are very, very popular. Anyway, these guys came to the conclusion through what they saw in the heavens that a baby had been born who was to be king of the Jews. And they said they had seen his star. Now, the Gospel tells us that it was in the time of Herod the Great. And it's generally accepted that Herod the Great died in about 4 BC. So it has to have been sometime before then. And although our nativity scenes often show the wise men coming to a stable, the Bible doesn't actually say that. When they arrived and found Jesus, they call him a young child, and it says when they came into the house, not the stable. So they probably arrived a little bit after Jesus was born. And we also know that when Herod got the message that they had deceived him, he went out and slaughtered all the little boys under 2 years old, according to the time that he'd determined from the wise men. So we believe that Jesus was probably born in about 6 BC, something like that. And that would have coincided with the time of that first census that took place during the reign of Caesar Augustus. So all of these things, all about Jesus' birth, is pretty firmly rooted in history. Now, we don't know the exact date, but the star itself is a bit of a mystery, because it could have been a miraculous event, it could have been a miraculous star, it could have been one of these conjunctions, or maybe it could have been a comet. We don't really know. So anyway, look, we'll have a little bit more of a talk about it when we come back.
Awesome. And I certainly hope we get just one part of a clear night. I'd still like to see these 2 planets lining up. It'd be pretty exciting. And who knows, might have been the Star of Bethlehem. Creation Ministries International, and we've been talking about the Christmas star. Yeah, something that'll be really visible as far as both planets aligning, that is Jupiter and Saturn, on around Sunday night, you say, Dr. John? Well,
I think it's Sunday night, Mick, but unfortunately here in New South Wales I don't think we're going to get much of a view. They might do better in Melbourne or Adelaide or Perth, but I don't think the things are looking good for us here in New South Wales.
I've been told they're really close at the moment as well. So even if we got a shot tonight, you'd still see them really close together. And so over the next couple of weeks, we'll see them very, very close together. But it's just a matter of getting a nice night.
We're not going to get a good look, I don't think. And it might have even been tomorrow, the 16th, that they were supposed to be the closest. I'm not sure. But look, we don't know that was the Bethlehem star. And it's very probable, of course, that when the wise men arrived in Jerusalem and saw Herod, they then left and they went to search for the young child. And it says that the star went before them, so they must have been looking at night. Now, whether it was a triple conjunction or a double conjunction or a special star or even a comet, you might imagine that a comet could have looked like it was pointing or something. But look, we just don't know. It's speculative, but it's fun to think about what it was. And of course, we know that Matthew's Gospel does record it, and it's a very important record because there are a couple of Old Testament prophecies that were fulfilled, really because of the wise men and the star. One of them was the prophecy, out of Egypt I've called my son. And because of the wise men and the threat from Herod, Joseph took Mary and the child to Egypt. So they then had to come back from that. And the other one was the prophecy about the destruction of the holy innocents, the little boys who were all murdered by Herod. So all of those things are very, very much predicated on the story of the wise men. So really, it's a great story. It's fascinating, but we really don't know what the star was.
Wow. Well, I'm still going to be looking towards the heavens over the next few nights and hoping for a break in the sky just so as I can see them. I mean, for people to be looking up and just thinking, well, maybe it's the Star of Bethlehem. I think that's a cool thing. People sort of focusing and just thinking about Jesus at this time of year rather than about presents and shopping.
And Santa Claus.
Yes, absolutely. You are on 94.9. It is send them through to our text line 0401 949 949. Now, Dr. John, in the media this week, some very, very interesting stats from the University of Auckland in New Zealand. They've been studying islands out there in the Pacific, and they say here a 2018 analysis of 30 coral atolls in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, encompassing 709 islands in total, found that 88.6% of the islands were either stable or increased in area in recent decades, and that none of the atolls had lost land area overall. Now, hang on a minute, I'm a little confused. We're being told about global climate change and how islands are going to turn into ocean very soon, yet they're growing, Dr. John. What's going on?
Isn't it amazing, Mick? All you ever hear is that the sea levels are rising because of climate change, and all of these Pacific islands are going to go under and people are going to be displaced. And there we have a university study that says the science is not settled.
No.
In fact, they're going the other way.
And you know, so many headlines actually say that the science is settled.
Yeah, and we know that science is never settled, because it's fluctuating and changing all the time. But I thought that was a very interesting article, you know, that they're either stable or getting larger, and there was no evidence of any of them losing territory.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just amazing. And look, there was another article as well in the last week, and I know that you saw it, about Mount Everest.
Yes.
And whatever you learnt about Mount Everest at school, about what height it is, well, you've got to think again, because it's now bigger.
Yes.
and this was an interesting one, because the height of Mount Everest has been measured traditionally by the people who live there, the Nepalese on one side and the Chinese on the other, and they have a slightly different method of calculating it. The Nepalese look at the rock on the top, and the Chinese take into account the snow on top of the rock. But look, they have now come to an agreement about the height of Mount Everest, and lo and behold, it's a bit higher than it was.
Which means everyone that climbs Mount Everest, every time they get to the top, they're the new record holder.
They are. It's interesting, isn't it? And anyway, Mount Everest is now a little bit higher than it was. And I thought the article was very, very interesting, because it actually said that Mount Everest has been rising by about 0.5 metre per century. Now, that's very interesting, because they also said that Mount Everest was about 50 or 60 million years old.
Yeah.
But rising at 0.5 metre per century. Now, it does actually stand to reason that mountains could rise, because we know that the mountains have been pushed up there by the collision of tectonic plates.
Yep.
And, of course, when the tectonic plates move, then we have earthquakes, and they've had a couple of recent earthquakes there in Nepal with a lot of displaced people, quite a lot of damage. So it's not surprising that we can see that Mount Everest does rise as a result of these tectonic plate movements. Now, we know that the Bible says that as well. The Bible says that at the end of Noah's flood, the mountains rose and the valley sank down and the waters ran off into the ocean. So we do know that that is how the mountain ranges were formed.
Yep.
But I thought it was very interesting that they said Mount Everest was 50 to 60 million years old. Well, if you calculate it out at a rise of 0.5 metre per century, in only 2 million years, that's 10,000 metres.
Yes.
And it's only a bit over 8,800 metres now, which means it would have been underwater 2 million years ago. Now, that is also a very interesting point, because we know that Mount Everest was underwater.
Yes.
Because the top of Mount Everest is sedimentary rock. Now, we know how sedimentary rock forms. It forms from floodwaters, and not only is it topped by sedimentary rock, that sedimentary rock has marine fossils and shells in it on top of Mount Everest.
Yeah.
So come on, you know, the Bible again says that everything was underwater with the global flood of Noah, and lo and behold, there we find on Mount Everest the top sedimentary rock with marine fossils. So once again, the Bible is vindicated.
Yeah.
But look, the other point to take out of that, of course, is where do they get the 50 or 60 million years from? And look, the truth is, it's just speculation. There is absolutely not a scrap of evidential support for times like that, or years like that, 50 or 60 million years.
Yes.
And when you think about it, the secular world depends on a lot of the science is founded on the principle of uniformitarianism, which we've spoken about on this program before. That supposedly the slow and steady processes that we see all around us are the only way that you can calculate what has happened in the past. This is what secular science believes. Now, creationists certainly wouldn't believe that, because we know that there have been catastrophes in the past, and Noah's flood, of course, is the classic one. But look, this is why Christian people don't need to be fazed by all of these dates and things that are plucked out of the air. 50 or 60 million years, or a couple of 100,000 years for mankind on the planet. Don't take any notice of those, because the evidential support simply isn't there.
Yep.
And when we have a look at what the Bible says, we find that even though the Bible says that Noah's flood was only about 4,500 years ago, and the world is only 6,000 years old, when you have a look at all the, you see, there is no evidence that would actually disprove that. No scientific evidence can counteract either of those dates that we get from the Bible. So we have to acknowledge that when you look at all the other evidences from all sorts of sources that corroborate the events that we read in the Bible, you think, well, maybe it's got a fair bit going for it with its time frame as well, because there's nothing in it that has ever been disproven.
Yeah.
So really, I think Christian people need to be reassured that what they read in their Bibles is true. And of course, the major story that we've been talking about, the birth of Jesus, which we commemorate at Christmas, that's also true, along with everything that he came to do on our behalf.
And some other news that came in just recently was in regards to a huge body of water that was found underground under Hawaii. Now, I know it's surrounded by ocean, but they just keep finding these new gigantic bodies of water way underground. And so many people have sort of asked that question, you know, if there was this giant flood of Noah, where's all the water gone? Well, they keep finding new, humongous bodies of water underground that no one ever knew were there before.
Yeah, look, there is such an amazing amount of water on the planet, and I mean, where did it come from? You know, according to, and we've mentioned this many times on the program, according to Big Bang Theory, you know, the Earth must have at one time been this very, very hot molten ball that wouldn't have had any water on it. So where did the water come from?
Yeah.
And of course, the Big Bang is quite contrary to what the Bible tells us, that water has been here right from the beginning.
Yes.
And I think when you look at the amount of water that is here, and you know that if the Big Bang were true, there couldn't have been any, then I think the Bible is vindicated once again.
Yes. You're on 94.9. It is 13 minutes to 9. From Creation Ministries International. He talks to us about all sorts of things, about creation, evolution, the stars, the planets, the aliens, the even I guess things like dinosaurs. So if you have any questions, send them through 0401 949 949. Dr. John, when it comes to news, last week, of course, we've just mentioned some of the news, but Elon Musk, he had his Starship, that giant tank, go 15 kilometres into the sky. He reckons one day he'll be able to take 100 people up to Mars. And there's other people saying Mars isn't such a good place to go because there's nothing there. But the good news is the spaceship got off the ground. Its landing was a bit rough. Well, actually, its landing was very rough. It exploded when it landed. But, you know, one day they'll fix that. Look, if they can't go to Mars, Dr. John, a lot of people are saying, hey, you know, there's other Goldilocks zones around stars out there. But we had some more bad news when it comes to one of the closest stars and planets to us during the week.
Yeah, look, Mick, our regular listeners will know that we talked about this a few weeks ago, about all of these supposed habitable planets out there, the exoplanets they call them, and they're thought to be, and I'm emphasise thought to be, planets that are revolving around stars somewhere out there, a bit like our sun and perhaps like our solar system. And you see these artists' conceptions of what those planets might be like, with trees and water and all sorts of life wandering around there. But none of that, of course, is proven. And we've just had another bit of bad news. And it's good that local scientists are the ones that are finding this out. This was the University of Sydney, and you mentioned the islands increasing in size was the University of Auckland. So you know the local Southern Hemisphere boys have really been at work.
Yes.
But anyway, we have now discovered that the nearest star to our sun is Proxima Centauri. And it had a planet revolving around it, so they think, called Proxima b. And Proxima Centauri is said to be a red dwarf star, so not quite as hot as our sun. And that planet was, if it existed, was a bit closer to Proxima Centauri than the Earth is to the sun. But because Proxima Centauri wasn't quite as hot, maybe that planet would have been habitable. But now, alas and alack, they've been observing some solar flares and radio emissions from Proxima Centauri, which look like they would be enough to fry any life that might have existed on that planet.
So what was an exoplanet is now a bit of an XE planet.
Well, you know, it's not likely to hold any prospect of life. And of course, this is what we're finding out all the time, isn't it, Mick? You know, the only reason why science thinks that there might be life out there is because they think they might have detected water, and where there's water there could be life, and it's all predicated on the belief in evolution, that if you have water then perhaps life can evolve, because they believe life evolved here. But look, our Bible tells us that life here is a creation, and of course we know that Earth is in that perfect Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold. It looks like it was actually designed for life, and of course that's what the Bible says it was. So
I might stay.
So yeah, look, I don't think I'd be booking your ticket to Mars or Proxima Centauri anytime soon, because I think we're probably better off hanging around Earth.
Yeah, particularly because the spaceship can't land yet. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want the spaceship to explode when it gets back.
No.
Even if you've had a good time exploring the other planets, you can't tell anybody about it if you lose your life when you return. So
yeah.
Look, Mick, I think it's been a difficult year for us. You know, for a fair bit of the time on this program, we had to do it by phone because we couldn't be in the studio. By the grace of God, we're now back here. This is going to be our last Tuesday morning for the year. We'll get back again in January. But look, it's been a difficult year for everybody, and I think things are not looking all that wonderful either over the coronavirus and the vaccines. We had the University of Queensland vaccine had to be canned because people ended up testing positive for HIV. Not that they had it, but they tested positive for it.
Yep.
So really, we're not out of the woods yet, and I think we're in a very, very fortunate position in Australia that we can watch and see what happens in England with the Pfizer vaccine.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, it's going to be interesting, and it'll be great when we come back in a couple of weeks. We'll see what's been going on in the meantime.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. John, and a Merry Christmas to you.
Yes, Mick, that's the important thing for us all to remember, what Christmas really does mean, the birth of Jesus and what he came to do on our behalf, and to give us the glorious eternity that we are going to enjoy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. John. Awesome year. And to everybody else out there, send your questions through for Dr. John. So he'll have a topic to talk about when he comes back after Christmas. The number again, 0401 949 949. That's our text line. Thanks, Dr. John.